Hi, I'm Jessica. I am one half of this flipped workshop presentation. Elliot is my other half. He should be walking around doing something smart. So today we're going to start the workshop out by watching this 20-minute video on the specifics of the flipped classroom. Take notes, rewind, pause, fast forward as needed. Take good notes though, because you're going to need them, especially if you're watching this and you're in today's flipped workshop. Okay? In between some of the slides here, some YouTube clips are going to pop up, and I'm going to try to also show you how some of the software works too. So the first thing I want to talk about is the idea of the flipped classroom. It's not really a quick thing that you do and you forget about, or some kind of fad in education that's just going to go away. It's a whole school of thinking that no more should you really have, as you see in this image, the traditional classroom, which I think most of us are used to from our college experience, where the professor talks, we listen. Classroom is a switch to the idea that the students are the center of the classroom. So it's going from teacher-centered to student. That is thinking kind of breeds learning. And most kids, when they're sitting watching lectures, they're not really thinking. They're just rushing to take notes or staring at the window or looking at the back of somebody's head or whatever it may be. And they're not really thinking, so the learning isn't happening. The idea of the flipped classroom is we're forcing them to think and do something with the lecture. So that's where the learning happens. It doesn't always have to be, which you're going to see in this presentation, videos either. There's a lot of different ways you can flip your classroom, but the main idea is, as you see here, it's a new philosophy. The main idea is the switch from teacher-centered to student-centered, which this can be very difficult because, as I said before, that's how we learned in college, and I think teachers in general are very comfortable with that idea because we think when we listen, but unfortunately not a lot of students do that, so we're losing a lot of them. Student-centered learning increases intrinsic motivation. There's a lot of research that backs that up. When the students get to decide how and when they learn, they become more interested in what they're learning, and then they're more motivated to actually do something. Students can decide when and how they will learn, as you're going to see. The lectures not come in, they're 48 minutes, they're with you, maybe they're not in the mood to watch it right then, maybe their head isn't in it, they just don't feel like writing. They can kind of choose when in their day they want to sit and listen to you. They can also pause and rewind you, which works really well for a lot of students who struggle with lecture. Specifically, students with IEPs, ones that really take time to write. So this idea will really help them. Also, the idea where you, the teacher, can differentiate your assessment on each student. In class, you're not spending all that time disseminating information, you are working with each student. So you can differentiate or kind of change up the assessment with them as you go and see how they're progressing. And again, the idea is to teach students not what to think, but how to think. Again, the idea of learning is a consequence of thinking. So you see from this image, it's the traditional to the flipped idea. Okay. So it's infancy. We have these two teachers, Jonathan Bergman and Aaron Sams. We're actually going to watch them in a video in a minute, talk about their classroom, and you can see flipped classrooms in action. They kind of lived out in a rural area. A lot of their students had to travel far distances, so there was a high level of students being absent. So they came up with the idea of flipped classrooms, doing their lectures online, burning them to a disk, uploading them to YouTube or their webpage, and then kids would keep up that way. Okay, so now we're going to watch a short video with Jonathan Bergman and Aaron Sams. You're going to see how it works in their classroom and, you know, hopefully what you can do here.
I'm Aaron Sams and I teach science here at Woodland Park High School. My ultimate goal, I guess, as a teacher is to help students become learners who can learn for themselves and by themselves. One of the problems that I was guilty of even prior to flipping my classroom around was the classroom was centered around me. I told them exactly what to learn, how to learn it, what assignments to do to learn it, and when to learn it, and how to prove to me that they learned it. I don't do that anymore. we changed the place in which content is delivered. Instead of standing in front of a class and delivering, here's how you do this type of problem, here's how this works, I deliver that direct instruction now asynchronously at home through these videos that we make with Camtasia Studio.
Times till whole.
Oh, we didn't do that last time.
The last step, they were already whole numbers. We had 1, 1, and 4. Here we don't have a whole number. So here's a few little tricks when you need to multiply by whole numbers. If one of your numbers ends in 0.5, you're going to multiply by 2.
Or something 0.5 times it by 2.
Right.
Okay, write this down, guys.
Yes. If something ends in 0.3 or 0.33 or 0.66, you multiply by 3.
And when the kids come to class, they don't show up to learn new stuff. They show up to apply the things that they learn at home and to ask me questions about the things they learned at home. So now they can have my lesson, if you will, what I would normally have stood up and lectured to them in class with some added features. They get that at home, and then what they were expected to do for homework is now what they do in my class. Life is different for me because I no longer am the guy who stands up in the front of the classroom and just yaks at a student for an hour or however long the class is. Now I walk around the class and I help kids. I'm a tutor, I'm a guide, I'm the putter-outer of fires, whatever it happens to be. In my crazy chemistry class, I walk around and do that. I don't stand up front and teach under the kind of the traditional model. I'm Aaron Sams. I'm a teacher, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, and I love Camtasia Studio.
Okay, so hope you enjoyed the video. The kind of idea besides just wanting to access students who aren't in your classroom is there's a lot of research out there that supports this. As you see in this info graphic here, the 2 key factors are driving increased adoption of the flipped classroom model. We're getting a lot of poor learning outcomes. You see there's like 31% who don't graduate, and that's kind of on the rise as the years progress. We're losing out on a lot of students, and the idea is that the teacher-centered idea of learning just isn't working anymore. So this is another way to kind of get them involved in their learning, hopefully build motivation, and a lot of the new standards are higher level thinking, so doing the flipped classroom really forces them to be doing those higher level thinking that are assessed in our new standards. So how it works. Teachers created 3 videos a week. Now don't be thrown off by that. You do not have to do 3 videos a week. That is a lot, and these especially kind of take a little bit of time. Students watched the 5 to 7 minute videos at home. Again, that is not written in stone. Some videos may be longer than that. Some may be shorter. I'm an English teacher, so if I was introing the Anglo-Saxons, for example, that would be a longer lecture. It just would be. There's more information. But if I was going to teach parallel construction, for example, for the non-Englishy types, that's a grammar writing thing, I could do that in a 5 to 7 minute video. So it depends on what you're teaching. Don't, be too held down by that 5 to 7 minute thing. They should be short if you can help it though. Class time was spent doing labs and interactive activities to help illustrate the concept. The next thing you might be thinking is, okay, if I do this outside of the class, what then am I going to do in class if I'm not up at the front, writing on the board, giving notes? What else is there? Well, what else is there is the students come to class and you do interactive activities that help the students display the knowledge of whatever you taught them. And normally we don't have time to do that because we're so busy giving instruction. So some of the pluses here is students receive instant feedback. Some of the programs you could use to create your videos allow you to do an online quiz at the end of the video. The students take the quiz, it's like a 5-question quiz, they tap their phones, the info gets sent directly to you so you can see how the students performed if you want to do that. Students don't get as frustrated because now they don't have to watch your lecture or whatever, go home, try to do the homework, get upset because they don't remember exactly what you said. They don't remember that one example they didn't write down, and then they give up or they just copy from somebody. So students don't get as frustrated. When they're doing the actual work now, they're in class with you and they're in class with all their peers so they can get help from them. Teachers revisit concepts students don't understand. When the students are at home watching the lectures, they're taking notes on them, and then they come in, and then class time is spent you going over the stuff that was still a little fuzzy for them. You could pull out groups of students who were fuzzy on the same area and teach just to them, while the other ones are doing a more higher level assessment. And again, you have teachers supporting students in class, which is, you know, the time they need you is for that support to actually use the skill that you're teaching them. So again, what are the students doing at home? They're watching the video. It doesn't always have to be a video either. It could be reading something. It could be watching a movie, watching a YouTube clip, researching something on the internet. Whatever it is, they're doing that, okay? Taking notes, asking questions. Now, this works really well if you are on the Cornell notebook, because the students take notes on one side, they ask their questions in the corner, and then when they come to class, then they're ready to ask you those questions. And maybe completing an online quiz if you want to set it up that way. So now, what do you do in class? The first 5 to 10 minutes, the students come in the day after they watch the video. This is important. Quiz them immediately on the content of the notes. The students may use their notes or not, it's up to you, but it's a way to really ensure that they are doing what they should be doing. 5 minutes after that quiz is done, address questions or areas of confusion you saw in common. After that, that leaves you with about another 30 minutes or so. What do? Students participate in actively demonstrating the skill. They have to be actively doing something. So for example, if I was teaching parallel construction, they would have to be actively working on something that's demonstrating that skill. And it can't be something simple like, you know, circle the noun. It has to be something more complicated than that, because now they have you there and they have each other. It has to be higher order thinking. Students are working together on this. Teachers jumping around from group to group. You're no longer in the front just kind of talking at them. You're kind of just bouncing around. You're going to have to redirect conversation, because you know this. You get them in groups doing things. They're going to start talking about prom dresses or whatever happened over the weekend. So you're going to have to constantly redirect conversation. You do this by talking in a way that allows them to mimic you. Going around from group to group and speaking in a way that you want them to speak, they will pick it up and start mimicking you. Pulling out groups of confused students for small teaching sessions. This works great if you happen to have an inclusion partner. Or me, I teach Western Studies, so I have my history teacher in there with me. So one of us can see, oh, everyone's confused on this area. Let's say maybe 10 kids out of, we teach a double period in Western Studies, so 10 out of our 40 are confused. Either myself or my partner would take those 10 out, move them over to the side, and reteach that skill to them. While the other ones, again, are doing something a little more, I would be managing the other ones. The last 3 minutes of class, the teacher brings the class back together to discuss the outcomes of the activity in connection with the video and notes. It's kind of like the summary, or if you want to think about it in a way like the bottom of the Cornell note sheet. It kind of wraps everything up. It brings the point to all of this, and maybe you talk about where this learning is going to go from here. So also I want to talk about peer instruction. This is another thing I actually use a lot in my classroom and like a lot. They're using it at a lot of colleges now. I actually just listened to a podcast where Harvard professors were talking about their use of peer instruction and how it's helping them. Basically what it is the students get the learning, the basic notes or whatever, the lecture, then they come into class. You pose a complex, high-order thinking question connected to the notes from the video. Sometimes you may think about it being a question that doesn't have a simple yes or no answer. Students formulate their own opinions on whatever the question is. Then they have to find someone with an opposing viewpoint to their own, someone who disagrees with them. Students then spend time trying to convince each other that their own position is the correct one to take. So they talk it out, they debate each other, they dialogue it, they discuss, well, I think it's this, oh, well, I think it's this, well, then why? And the idea is student discovery takes place. You know this, students like to argue and debate with each other. And, essentially they're going to mimic you. So while all this is going on, you bounce around from group to group and listen to their viewpoints and ask them questions to get the thinking going. And then eventually the groups are going to start modeling you there. The idea is to get them thinking, because the learning is a consequence of that thinking. So peer instruction is a way kind of for the kids to teach themselves. Maybe someone who got the right answer has the correct thinking on something, somebody who has the wrong answer does not. So they get together, the right answer student teaches the other one, and the other one gets it from how the other one's talking to them. Maybe not from how you talked about it on the lecture, but they're still going to get the learning. So something to think about. Peer instruction, I've done it a lot last year. A good session will take up a whole period, and it's very beneficial to them. Another way to use flipped classrooms. So let's recap. Flipping a classroom means a switch from teacher-centered to student-centered instruction. I know this is a big switch. You have to be a little bit fearless here. It's difficult because you're used to teaching in a certain way for however many years, so kind of giving up some of that control is a little bit scary. Technology is used only to help you. Never use it just for the sake of using it. Don't go nuts thinking you have to record 1,000 videos. It's going to take way too much time. If I want to teach the Anglo-Saxons, for example, before teaching Beowulf, and making a video just doesn't work for me for that, I won't do it. Thinking about that, I may do that for maybe one of my lower level classes, because they could benefit from the pause, rewind, but my higher level classes, I may not. I may lecture in class for that. It really depends, and you as the teacher have to make that decision. Students watch the video, they take notes, they're assessed promptly. That's something that's really important. If you have them go watch the video and they come in and there's no quick assessment or grade given or something based off of the video, then the whole thing is kind of pointless. The activity has to happen the day after. Class time is spent on demonstrating those skills. They have to demonstrate, they have to do, they have to create something. Peer instruction can happen, like we talked about, labs, literature circles, Socratic seminars, analyzing complex primary source documents, great for the history people and the English people there. Looking at pictures, artwork, debates can happen, all with that knowledge that you gave them on the video or the reading or whatever it is you gave them the night before. They have to use that video or that knowledge to do these assignments. So kids will wiggle out of this as long as they can, but ultimately, if they're not citing that learning, they're going to flounder. So they're going to find ways to get it done. So some flipping tips. I got this from trying some of these things myself, doing a lot of research, listening to a lot of podcasts, a lot of people who have really changed their whole way of teaching to this flipping classroom idea. Number one, it takes time. So steal what you can from the internet, YouTube, Khan Academy. It has thousands of videos ready to use. We're going to show you in the next video. There is a place on the Smartboard website with thousands of videos already set up to Smartboard. Plan your class time accordingly. The issue is that if you're not lecturing in class, and I know some teachers really do talk a lot in class, and not that there is anything wrong with that, and if that has worked for you forever, that's great, but if you're not doing that anymore, or every day, what then are you doing with them? So you have to plan that class time accordingly. Students must be working on hands-on display of their newly found skill. It has to be something higher level too. It can't be something that's recall. It can't be recall, because that's what the quiz is for. The demonstrating of those skills has to be in the activity. Get ready for some resistance. You know this. Kids hate doing work. Spending class time thinking is hard. They would prefer to sit and listen to you lecture and stare out the window and do whatever else they're doing, and then take a simple recall quiz and then be done with it. But the thing is, that's not causing them to learn. That's just causing them to remember something for a week or two. Which is really not what we want them to do, especially considering the new testing that we've been getting from the state. You know this. And finally, don't try to do too much. Start with just a few lessons a marking period you want to flip. Don't go nuts. Don't try to do, everything all at once. Do your regular thing, and then maybe once a marking period, once a month, try flipping one of your lessons that you think would really work. And then just kind of grow. Also, it's a pretty good idea if you find somebody that is in your department, maybe teaches the same course as you, work with that person. Maybe you can make one video, the person can make the other, you can make the videos together, like the flipping classrooms do, and eventually kind of build a library of things. But don't try to do too much. You'll get overwhelmed and just a little aggravated. So okay, you're done. Review your notes. If you've missed any of this, rewind any parts, write down some questions you might have, think about these ideas, roadblocks that you can anticipate coming, because obviously there are going to be some benefits of this. Maybe you have some questions you might want to ask myself or Elliot. So take a second, pause this if you want to, and we'll be with you in a minute.